go again, and it sort of came out of nowhere that I had to cancel a gig. Just like pouting. Well, and have, something wrong, so I have to. He's fine though.
You ready, Sherry?
KPI. 6 years he's had.
Okay, please join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Help. I have a little help.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
Anyone have any changes they want to make to the agenda?
Move adoption as is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Report from closed session. Mr. City Attorney.
There was a closed session at 7 o'clock this evening. It was a conference with real party negotiators regarding Sierra Point properties pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Direction was given, no action was taken.
Okay, thank you. Next is oral communications, and I have two requests. Kevin Fryer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Kevin Fryer. I'm a Brisbane resident and I live at 414 Swallowtail Court. I'm here tonight to speak about Live at Mission Blue. Now, I know it's on tonight's consent calendar and each year it goes sailing through without any comment. But I thought that this year, as this is the occasion of our 10th season, that maybe I would come up and speak and talk a little bit about the history and the successes of Live at Mission Blue. I first moved to Brisbane in 1997. I lived across the street from the hardware store in the little apartment building there. And a couple of years later, I decided to stay, and I saw Mission Blue Center being built. And I used to ride my bike up there, and I'd look through the window, and I'd think to myself, this is a space for a concert hall. Who do I talk to? Now, I should say, for those who don't know me, my day job is I make musical instruments. I have been doing this. This has been my profession for 30 years now. I make reproduction 17th and 18th century early keyboard instruments, harpsichords. These are the instruments that Bach, Handel, and Purcell played on. And part of that job is to service these musical instruments in the concert hall setting. So I have worked in concert halls all over the Bay Area, large and small, all across the country, Lincoln Center in New York, and in Europe. So when I saw Mission Blue Center, I recognized it as a potential place for concerts. Unknown to me, when this space was being designed and built, both Robin Leiter and Carol Nelson had in mind that it would be a performance space. And I think they had a secret dream that maybe someday there would be classical concerts there. But I didn't know that at the time. Around the same time, the City Council of that period, this is 2003, had put into place a co-sponsorship program. And this co-sponsorship program, if you were a Brisbane resident artist, the city would work with you to put on events in various venues around the city. And I believe that myself and Jung Hae Kim, Brisbane's resident harpsichordist, were the first people to fill out an application for a co-sponsorship for 2 trial concerts in 2003 at Mission Blue Center. And we did this, and it was a tremendous success. Right on the tail of that, we came back and we said, okay, we want to start a concert series. We came to the City Council. Around the same time, I connected with Friends of the Brisbane Library, and I see Jerry Sully is here, my old friend. I came to them and I said, look, I'm a harpsichord maker and I want to start a concert series, and let's do this as a benefit for Friends of the Brisbane Library. It'll be part of one of their programs, and Jerry didn't bat an eye. She said absolutely yes, and for the first 5 years or so, the two of us worked very, very hard to launch this series. In the first 5 years, we did all kinds of programs. We did programs for school children. We commissioned new works, and of course, we did 4, 5, even 6 concerts a season. And then the economic downturn hit us all, and it hit us hard. And of course, arts organizations are often the canary in the coal mine. And arts organizations, small arts organizations like ourselves, were dropping like flies. We made a decision that what we would do was scale down to one single concert. And so our 6th season was one concert. It was a great concert, but it was also a placeholder. It kept our underwriters in place. But I wrote a letter to them and said, here's what's happened. Here's what we're going to do. We need a fraction of what we'd asked for you in the past. We knew they were being heavily hit by all kinds of other organizations, everybody desperate to try to fill that gap that the economic downturn had. That turned out to be a very smart decision because we didn't shut it down. Once we shut it down, starting it over again would be 3 times as hard. Since then, we've built it back up. The next season, our 7th season, we did 3 programs, then 3. Last year we did 4, and this year we're doing 5. 4 concerts and 1 free event, lecture event, talking about music, talking about the series, which I believe we may actually have here in this room. The success of Live at Mission Blue is something that we can all be proud of. It takes a lot of people to make it go. It takes businesses, it takes community, and the particular success of Mission Blue has been the city support, what's really made us able to do it. And I think that it's something we can all be very proud of. The business community early on, we had support from Mitch Bull. Mitch Bull then was working at Hitachi. He was in community outreach. Our first 3 years, he also took a chance on us and gave us a substantial amount of money, which helped us get launched. Now, of course, he's at the Chamber of Commerce, and I recently had a chance to remind him and say, hey, I hope you realize that money was well spent. We also have a large number of volunteers that help us, and volunteers like Michelle Salmon and Terry O'Connell, who have been our hosts for the post-concert receptions for more years than I can remember, and it takes all of that to make it work. Live at Mission Blue has also, as a dividend, has raised more than $50,000 for Friends of the Brisbane Library for library programs across those 10 years. And I think that's a really great accomplishment. The other night at the Candidates Forum, Clark spoke about recreational programs and their being part of economic development. And I heard that and I thought that really is actually true. Of course, it's not direct. You don't get sales tax from that. But things like recreational programs create a context that gives a setting for economic development. And I think also Live at Mission Blue is one of those things. I recently was looking on the website of one of the places up on the ridge, and I saw on their website they had only 3 links on their website to other websites for people interested in what it's like to live in Brisbane. One was to the city website, one was to the Chamber of Commerce website, and the third was to Live at Mission Blue. So we are part of economic development. Some statistics about Live at Mission Blue. About 50% of our funding comes from within Brisbane. This is business donations and individual donations, and 50% of it comes from outside of Brisbane. Our audience also breaks right about 50-50. 50% of our subscribers are from inside Brisbane, and 50% of our audience is from outside of Brisbane. Brisbane, Live at Mission Blue also has developed an international reputation as an extraordinary place to perform. Each year, I get about 60 concert proposals from musicians across the country, from musicians in Europe, in South America, and this last year from South Africa for the first time. Live at Mission Blue is also taught at the Conservatory of Music. It's taught in Dr. Kip Krenna's graduate seminar on the business of music. This is a class where these students who are now ready to go out in the world and they say, okay, now what do we do? How do we get a job? You know, we're not going to sit home and don't sit home and wait for the phone to ring. That's not how it works. One of those seminars is focused on Live at Mission Blue. I go and speak to the class. I talk about this unique thing that we have created here, all of us collectively, the city, the community, and businesses. And I listen to their questions. I hear their questions. Of course, one of their questions always is, how can I get a gig there? And, you know, I've listened to them carefully, and each year I say, well, this is how you would go about do it. This is sort of the lessons. How would you approach someone like me? Well, first, invite me to your concert. You have a graduate recital, invite me. And when they do, when the students take the initiative, I always go. This season, for the first time, we will present one of those graduates from that class. We're presenting it as an emerging artist slot on the series, and I hope to continue that in the future. The name of that group is Jarring Sounds. It's a lute guitar player and a singer. They are stunning. Pat Waldo invited me over for lunch last Friday, and we talked about Steve and his years of service to our community. Steve and Pat were subscribers to Live at Mission Blue for many years. Pat told me how much they enjoyed these concerts and how pleased and proud Steve was to have these cultural events here in Brisbane. Even towards the end, when social events were becoming difficult for Steve, he would always come up to me and say, those concerts now those are a good thing. And it made me feel good to know that he had appreciated them that much. Over lunch, Pat and I discussed the upcoming 10th season and the challenges and rewards of a decade of presenting chamber music in Brisbane. She wanted to know how she could help, and we discussed ideas about how, for the 10th anniversary season, we could bring wider recognition to this cultural institution and the community that supports it. I'm pleased to announce here tonight that Pat Waldo has made a major contribution to Live at Mission Blue to help us fund public relations and marketing for our 10th season. She does this in honor of her late husband, and we will dedicate this coming season to the memory of Steve Waldo. In honoring Steve and his years of service to our community, we also honor each one of you. We honor our mayors, our council members, commissioners, and volunteers, past, present, and future. We honor all of those who roll up their sleeves and ask, where can I help? And how can I make a difference? Because it was Steve's belief that it is community participation and citizen involvement that is our town's most valuable resource. Pat also asked me to extend an invitation to everyone here tonight, as well as those watching at home on TV, an invitation to join her and make a contribution in Steve's honor. Contributions both large and small will help us to continue into a second decade, to present extraordinary chamber music in the fine acoustical setting of Mission Blue Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think Live at Mission Blue was one of those extraordinary aspects of Brisbane that really makes us stand out. And of course, you're the one person primarily responsible for that. My wife and I have, I think, been seasons ticket holders for all 9 seasons. And we're looking forward to the 10th. And I do remember the conversations between Robin and Carol, and it was definitely, as you said, it was their intent that this would be a prime chamber concert venue. And that was their objective, and I know they worked hard at that because the acoustics usually don't happen by accident, as you know. So it really is a tremendous aspect of the Brisbane scene that you've given us as a gift, and we really appreciate that. Anyone else want to add anything?
Kevin, that was outstanding. I mean, just to go through the history of it, because a lot of folks don't know that, and you put that together, it was extraordinary. A nice story. And I'll tell you, that building is definitely acoustical, because anytime you put an electronic item in there, it just doesn't work. It's designed for acoustics, for sure. So you definitely were successful in that. Well, thank you, Kevin, and Jerry, and everybody that put all this together. Hard work.
Do you want to, Terry?
I have to say thank you, Kevin, and to all the supporters of the Live at Mission Blue concert series. It is phenomenal, and when people who've come for the first time and hear the music are just blown away by the quality and the sound, and that you're within arm's reach of someone producing something so extraordinary. So I applaud you, Kevin, for making it happen and bringing such a wonderful event to Brisbane for 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, Kevin, it's one thing to bring something, to a community and have the community to enjoy it, but it takes an extraordinary person to, reach beyond your borders, to bring others to experience it as well as Brisbane citizens. And then Brisbane citizens are being exposed to folks who are from the outside, and it's just, that's what we really need, as a society as a whole, as a country. We don't belong in these little, microcosms. I mean, we're one people, and music is one of those things that definitely connects us all. And thank you for shining that on us.
Jerry?
Hi, I'm Jerry Sully. I've been a Brisbane resident for 41 years. I live at 4 Margaret Avenue. Just wanted to add a few things about Live at Mission Blue. 10 years ago, Kevin's dream became our dream. He came to our Friends of the Brisbane Library meeting and spoke to our board about harpsichords and a chamber music concert series that would benefit the library, and immediately we were on board. Kevin noticed that our Mission Blues Center on the Ridge had just the right acoustics for cellos, harpsichords, and other wonderful musical instruments. Planning the first concert series with Kevin was fun, kind of like putting on a show in the barn with Mickey and Judy. Kevin selected wonderful musicians to perform, which is why the series has been such a success year after year. The Friends of the Library cashiered at the concerts, provided food, drink, and flowers for the artists, and sold refreshments at halftime, or intermission, as Kevin calls it. Opening night, we're just about to begin when a friend rushes out and says she's just gone into labor. An auspicious omen for the beginning of our series. She had a healthy baby the next day. Kitka performed that night. Kitka is a group of Bay Area women who sing haunting Eastern European folk songs. They came out and stood behind us and then sang thrilling notes and harmonies, and I still remember the hair on the back of my neck standing up and thinking, wow. There have been many wow moments since then. Through Kevin, I learned what good chamber music sounded like. He's involved our schools by inviting classes to visit his workshop and see how a harpsichord is made, as well as having special free concerts for our students. It's thrilling to think that artists of this caliber come to our small town, and I also like the fact that students and seniors have a special price at the concerts. A special thanks needs to go out to the City of Brisbane, who've been so supportive, and the Brisbane City Council for supporting this wonderful concert series year after year and valuing the importance of the arts in our town. Also, the former board members of Friends of the Brisbane Library and all our friends who we got to usher, thank you so much, and thanks for continuing to support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Would anyone else like to speak under oral communications? Okay. Next is a proclamation. You can tell by who's coming to the front that it's about fire. As a matter of fact, it's about fire prevention, which is better than fire, right?
Absolutely.
And so we have a proclamation here, and I thought I'd highlight some of the key points and you know, ask for your response, Chief, if you have some further comments. But the theme this year for Fire Prevention Month for October 2013 is the prevention of kitchen fires. And it's something I didn't realize, but according to the information here in the proclamation, cooking is the leading cause of home fires and home fire injuries, which was not in my consciousness, but it certainly is now. And one of the interesting things, though, was that 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen. It usually was from unattended cooking. 2/3 start with ignition of food or other cooking materials. So what was also interesting is that of course, but for adults, that leads to what's known as thermal burns. But actually for little kids, that is kids from under 5, the major problem from the kitchen is not fires themselves, but being burnt by scalding probably water or some other oil or what have you that somehow gets spilt on them. So it's a real safety problem, the kitchen, if it's not handled responsibly. And though the fire department is there to deal with it if necessary, they would really rather not. And so I think we really want to bring to people's attention that, you know, the kitchen can be a dangerous place, and they should be careful, and particularly when there are little kids around, because, you know, they need the adult to make sure that something bad doesn't happen. So we're going to make a proclamation and call October 2013 as Fire Prevention Month, and I will read the actual proclamation, which says that we proclaim this month as Fire Prevention Month and encourage all City of Brisbane residents to heed the important safety messages of Fire Prevention Month and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of fire and emergency services. And I have a proclamation to give to you, and then after which I hope you will have a few words for us.
Thank you very much, Mayor Miller. Honorable council members, to just reiterate very quickly, kitchen fires are the leading cause of fires, structure fires. And we find that to be the case in North County Fire and in Brisbane. Over 30% of the fires we experience, kitchen fire, structure fires, are from the kitchen. And it only takes a moment of inattention when you're cooking for that to happen. Turn around to answer a phone, or look at something else, or run to get something out of the other room. Very quickly it can turn into a fire. And as Mayor mentioned, small children have a real propensity for reaching for objects that are sticking out. And so it's really important to turn all the handles in, away from the outside of a stove or a table, because they'll just reach up to a table just as easily. As a general guideline, we say keep at least a 3-foot radius around the cooking appliances or hot foods on the table for any children unattended, but they shouldn't be unattended in the kitchen areas. So we appreciate the effort that we make to as the mayor says, to prevent instead of having to respond to. And on behalf of the chief and North County Fire Authority, the firefighters in Brisbane, we appreciate the ongoing support the council and the city has given the department. And as we always do, we visit the schools. Today we visited Littman School, and we will be on the 17th going to BES, presenting some fire safety information to the children. And additionally, we were out at the park on Saturday and had a very good turnout, and were able to interact with many of the people. And we had our inspector there and our, excuse me, our medical paramedic supervisor there. And between the two of them, they handed out a lot of information on fire safety, disaster preparedness, and we also taught a little bit of hands-only CPR to those who were willing to participate. So again, we thank you very much and look forward to another year. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, so on the agenda, the next is the consent calendar.
I'd like to remove item B.
Okay, that's good, so would I, so that makes two of us. Any other item anyone would like to remove?
I do not.
So you're right, Kevin, we never remove the ghost mothership, it just goes sailing through.
All right. Make a motion to approve item A, C, D, E, F, G, H, I.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so what did we just approve? We approved the, excuse me, the council minutes of July 29th, monthly investment report, adopted the ordinance on condominiums that we've been talking about several meetings, slurry seal project, that Karen Kinzer knows, community park use application for best for movie nights, and also the soccer organization's going to have a barbecue at the park, not at the same time.
AYSO.
AYSO, yeah. And, of course, the co-sponsorship of Live at Mission Blue. And also, there's a police vehicle being declared a surplus. That's what we did. So now we have left on the consent calendar, we didn't approve, was the minutes for August 19th. Clark?
All I got was a yellow piece of paper in there.
Oh, really? Oh, you didn't even get them?
I didn't get the minutes.
Oh, my. So you want to put it off next time then?
I would.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Remember, we talked and I said,
Yeah.
get them online and they're in your box. So,
Okay.
But
I
guess you
never
didn't get a chance.
picked them up, so.
Okay, you picked up it a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I gave you the package, so.
Okay. Well, if we can just put them off, I'm good with that.
Okay, so I have a couple of suggestions, maybe I can just give them to you and incorporate them, hopefully, if you agree, and then we can look at it next time.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so we'll re-agendize this one.
I know it's not on the agenda, but we had come to the conclusion we would be getting our agendas on Thursdays, and we seem to be getting them late again.
It's
Yeah.
something that's because staff meetings are actually still, had to go back to Wednesdays because it really wasn't working on Tuesday or something like that, was it?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the problem. I mean, if the council would like us to try to focus on getting them out on Thursday, then we'll make every effort to do that. Sometimes it's just a matter of contracts that we're dealing with that, you know, we're trying to deal with it up to the last minute. So Friday is the statutory deadline. But if the council's policy decision is that you would like us to put them out on Thursday, we're certainly going to do that. And by Thursday, I would assume we're talking about Thursday by 5 o'clock.
Well, it's always good to have a extra working day to review, especially for those of us who have other full-time commitments. So I would prefer, if we can do it, to get them out earlier than later.
Okay. We'll make every effort to
You know, late afternoon Friday cuts it pretty close.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that completes the consent calendar. Then we have new business, and we have 2 contracts to look at, and I think we got some new versions of them, so I think we need some explanation, right?
You will get some.
Okay, good.
So the first item is the sustainability plan consultant services. Before you is the contract with
Could we hear,
I don't think
you're
your,
not
microphone-
directly on the mic there.
I thought I turned it on and I turned it off.
Yeah.
I've got everybody coming at me. Okay.
Okay.
So let me start over. The first item is a sustainability plan consultant services contract. The proposal is the contract with Integral Group. City had been contracted to Jeff Cyphers for this work through the first phase, or the development of the plan itself. Mr. Cyphers is no longer available, so we started looking at other alternatives. Integral Group appears to be the most proficient group in terms of dealing with One Planet Living concepts and those types of plans. We did an interview with Andrea Traber, or the committee did an interview with Andrea Traber a couple weeks ago, and asked that we move forward with the contract with them. Kevin Hyde is the principal and the chief executive officer of Integral. Stuart and I did have an opportunity to meet with him, but he will not be the key person on this. Andrea will be. In terms of the agreement itself, there is a couple changes from what we had originally placed in your packet and what was online. Handed them out to you, but I'll just go through those. At the bottom of page 1, and I believe you've highlighted this for everyone? Okay. The bottom of page 1, we've just indicated that this phase of
Should
the
have.
contract.
Okay.
That's it. Should look like this. There it is. Okay, ready.
At the bottom of page 1, we've indicated that this phase, which we're calling phase 1, which is the key performance indicators, that we anticipate that it will end by the end of calendar year 2013, and that the first meeting or the next meeting of the committee will be this Thursday, which is scheduled. If you go to the next page, which is actually page 3, it looks like. On this page, at the bottom of task 1, we have put in language that just indicates that there's an anticipation that the next phase of this work will be the implementation of the plan, and that work will take place during calendar year 2014. We will develop a separate contract to be brought back to the City Council at that time, towards the end of the year. And then if you go on to the next page, we just clarified that the final work product will be the property and be owned by the City of Brisbane. So those are the 3 changes to the agreement. I would just note that this the contract we're asking for approval tonight is for $7,660, and that is a reimbursable through our reimbursement agreement with the property owner, UPC.
Okay, questions? I think both Cliff and I would say that it's consistent with our discussions, right?
Yeah, no, we had a really good meeting with Andrea. She seems to be extremely, on the ball and very familiar with One Planet Living system. And I actually think she'll be a better fit for us than our previous consultant. So very excited about continuing the sustainability plan with Andrea and Integral, and yeah. So there you go.
Well, it just seems like the next step in, this whole process that we've been going down the road on.
Right.
And so be more than happy to make a motion to consider approval of the scope of services.
Okay, as the newest version thereof. And there's our second?
I'd like to make a comment first, if I can.
Yeah, well, or we can make a second and just make the comment after that. Either way.
As you wish.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that we could still talk about it after the motion's on the table.
It puts it on the table.
Right. So is there a second?
All right, I'll just second.
Okay, Terry?
So this contract is for time and materials. So we are fairly confident that the consultant can complete this scope of work for this price? I'm just wondering why we didn't have a closed-in contract for this scope, this portion, instead of a time and materials approach.
We've done a lot of the work already.
What was the basis of the, why don't we?
If I may, I was
Yeah.
just answering a question to Terry.
But I was wondering, what was the basis of the time and materials, though?
Well, Jeff Cyphers also contributed, the previous consultant, to the performance indicators.
Right.
So, Andrea's coming in, in the later stages
Right.
of this section, and so that was from our meeting that she would review what the body of work that we've already done, and then help shape and provide feedback for this last part of it's kind of like a four-part process. So we're at the third process right now. So, this appears to be, I was actually surprised at how low it was. But then again, we have done a lot of the work already, so.
Yeah, and this, the reason it's low is because when we get to the next phase, which is the implementation phase, you'll see a much higher number.
Sure.
So this one basically is based off of the input that we gave to her at the committee meeting, which basically said that we anticipated 3 meetings between now and the end of the year, and that, as you indicated, we've already developed performance indicators. We need help in going and go through that and shoring that up between now and the end of the year. I guess a little bit to answer Terry's questions, it's a little bit, the reason it's time and materials is because kind of our process.
Yeah.
Our process is more of one of bringing a consultant in to work with the group and to help provide information to the group and suggestions to it. We're not asking for a consultant to just put together a project for us and
That's what we're-
give us
Yeah,
back a
That's
work
what I was trying
product.
to get at.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's what we've done.
Right.
This committee has been very hands-on.
It's a hands-on, it's more of a staff,
Right.
It's almost more of a staffing of the committee and research than it is a delivering to us a product.
And the previous consultant I'm assuming he had made a commitment to completing this project at the beginning. Was it because of our dragging it out that he was unable to complete the scope of work he was originally?
He completed the scope of work of what he contracted to do. We're now just going through the different phases of getting the completed documents. That I think the conversation at the council's dais tonight is that this has been a 3 or 4 step process, depending, I guess, how you look at it. But clearly, putting together the plan, which is what Jeff Cyphers really helped us do, and with the committee, again, very iterative process, and then now the key performance indicators, and then ultimately an action or implementation plan that we can then use more concretely in terms of the development agreement and negotiations. But Jeff was really involved in that first part of it, just the plan itself. So he completed his obligations. And matter of fact, if we had continued on with Jeff, we would be bringing back a consultant contract tonight with Jeff for you.
It was his decision to withdraw his services because presumably he has taken a full-time job with another firm where he was operating as a sort of a freelance consultant.
Right.
He's changed the basis of his employment, which is the reason he gave us anyway. I'm not going to say that absolutely for sure that's the reason, but that's the reason he gave us. And so then we needed to find another consultant. And we were lucky enough to find someone who was very as Cliff said, very close to the One Planet Living understanding of sustainability. And in fact, this particular firm has actually evaluated Sonoma Mountain Village, which is where Jeff Cyphers got his feet wet into the One Planet Living sustainability materials. So there's a lot of synergism there.
Okay, thank you.
And the whole committee liked her. I mean, that's another thing, I think, that she's an architect, and a green architect, and seems to have a good understanding of, what we need to have done. And one of the things we discovered with Cyphers was that there was a sort of I think this also relates to the time and materials. There was a little bit of a lack of clarity when we set up the arrangement with Cyphers about, how much of the stuff he would write and how much we would write the committee. And he ended up writing more than we had had in mind. And so there was a little bit of a misunderstanding there. And so I think we really wanted to try to avoid that happening again. And so that's why we want to make sure that her time goes into things that she has expertise, that we don't need, her just, drafting things when we can do that ourselves. But we do need her expertise, because we're not green architects.
Thank you.
Yeah, the key part of this too is it's reimbursable.
Right.
So it's not really costing the
Right.
actual dollars going out.
Right.
Call the question.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve this contract. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, that's the first contract. Second contract is with Kaiser Marston.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this agreement is an update to previous agreements we've had with Kaiser Marston to do economic and financial analysis for us on the Baylands project. The proposal before you tonight has several different aspects to it. This work will be done over the next many months with regards to the development scenarios and alternatives that are in the draft EIR and will be under consideration by the City Council, as well as helping us dovetail the information into the community survey project that we're doing with FM3 Group, and then looking at various, helping us look at potentially bringing on a sustainability economic analysis for this project. Tim Kelly is here tonight, and Tim has been working with us and familiar with this project over probably a 10-year period of time at this point. So he, and this contract also is a reimbursable through the reimbursement agreement we have with UPC. There are a couple of changes in the agreement that I can just walk you through quickly. You should have them in front of you, and they should be highlighted in yellow. On page 2 of the agreement, under the first bullet point there, this has to do with the review of the reasonableness of the data that's provided by UPC. We've put in language that basically says if the reasonableness analysis is hampered by lack of appropriate data, KMA, Kaiser Marston, in consultation with city staff, shall seek to acquire the requisite data. I think we're trying to build into the contract some flexibility because we don't know for sure exactly what information is going to be available, and also what information we may decide that we need as we move along in this process. In the bullet point, which is, let's see, the fourth down, just making it clear that this is alternatives and scenarios that we're going to be looking at. There are 4 major alternatives and then some accompanying scenarios that are being studied in the EIR, just being clear that all of those we want to be looking at in terms of financial analysis.
There are 2 places there, and you've got the first one, alternatives and scenarios, but there's a second one in the same sentence. Should also be alternatives and
right,
scenarios.
would at the end there. Yeah.
Right.
And then under the community survey, just making it clear that the KMA will be working with the council and staff. We have a council subcommittee that's working on the survey, so that interface will happen. And then on the bottom of page 3, we just put clarifying language in there that the firms that KMA brings to us to discuss the sustainability economics are firms that have knowledge, quantitative expertise in ecological economics. The mayor has assured me that that is a proven field of study. And then on page 4 is this issue of the information that we are working with. And we just put language in there that if Kaiser Marston determines that proprietary information would be useful, then they will consult with the city regarding access to such data, which may include purchasing that information. So with those items, I can answer any questions with regards to this agreement. Tim Kelly, as I indicated, is here.
Would Mr. Kelly like to make a few remarks?
He can answer for himself.
I mean, he's come all this way to come to our meeting, might as well give him a chance, right?
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name's Tim Kelly. I'm the president of Kaiser Marston Associates. We're in San Francisco. We're a 40-year-old firm that for the last 40 years, we've been a real estate, economic, and financial advisor to public agencies a great deal of that time, evaluating feasibility, land valuation, fiscal impacts, infrastructure financing, public benefits that all get wrapped up into a development agreement, all the issues that you have here at the Baylands. We're very active in the Bay Area, all up and down the peninsula and around the Bay Area. As the city manager says, we've been involved in Baylands for a number of years, so we have some familiarity with the developer and his consultants and the type of information they might provide. Our role here is to, as the city manager said, is to help clarify the reasonableness of their proposals on the development economics. We're not proposing to start from scratch. We're proposing to use their information and try to explain to you what they're saying. So that was why some of the language was added that if the information isn't sufficient, then we would ask for more information, which is a clarification, which would be correct. Also, the other important part is the community survey and trying to help staff and the city council identify or frame issues that relate to fiscal and economic benefits as they may end up in survey questions. Just as a comment on that, I have a partner, Debbie Kern, that does a lot of that work. So I think you did meet Debbie, and so some of the meetings, in that case, you might see Debbie instead of me. She's been involved with the firm for 30 years. She's already done a fiscal impact analysis that's like 90% complete on the project. But as you get into the survey and you start breaking it down into sub areas, there'll probably be new questions that come along, because right now it's done what I call on a holistic basis. The whole thing is done at once. But at some point in the process, you'll probably start going to break it out into pieces and how those work out. So that is our role. We're here as an advisor to the staff and to the council. You're our client. And we've worked closely with staff before, and we look forward to working with you on this.
So the presumption is that you are really providing information for the city, and in that sense representing the city's perspective and not the developers.
Absolutely. We try to be objective in terms of presenting what we think the private sector is trying to say, but we're definitely trying to, we definitely will present it in what meets your objectives and what you want to go and what you're trying to accomplish. And so we will take what the private sector gives to us and probably reshape it and represent it so that it meets your needs. We're trying to work it so it works for both sides, hopefully. That's the idea here, but our first goal is to make it work for you. It has to work, obviously it has to work for our client first. So that's the stating the obvious, I guess.
Okay. All right, questions?
pretty clear to me. I know we've been working on this for a long time.
I really enjoyed the meeting that we had with you and Debbie, and it was very informative. And you guys are totally professional, and you have a great history of working with other cities and organizations, and I think just having that all those years of experience with the Baylands, really, we're fortunate because this will be a key part of how we eventually develop the Baylands. I mean, if it doesn't work economically for us, what's the incentive to do it? So, I really look forward to continuing, the dialogue and learning more too.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry?
So with the changes in the language, we're still working off of the information provided by the developer unless you feel that it's not adequate, and then you'd be requesting more information through staff. Is that correct?
Yes. We think it's the most efficient and reasonable way to start. They would present their information, their conclusions. We'd look at it. We'd make an evaluation of reasonableness, and if we think there are issues that need to be addressed or further addressed or not adequately addressed, we'll bring those up. Again, let me back up. I mean, we're doing this in the context of what your objectives are, the city's objectives, and wanting what you want to achieve. And so we're trying to make the two work together. But it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to go off and start having dueling market studies, or I'll let them run their financial analysis and then we'll look at it.
In respect to, and this may be out of your comfort zone to answer, but in respect to the assumptions on data, in a draft or in an EIR, the assumption is that everyone is lawful and is telling the truth. Basically, that, what measures may be taken or what assumptions might be made are assumed to be correct. And so you're not held to that same standard because you can take a reasonable.
That's a really good question. I think the first place we do look is what are the underlying assumptions that they use, and do we agree with them?
Okay, so you'll look at that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the assumptions drive everything.
It's like a peer review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will see if we agree with the underlying assumptions, because if, they're the foundations on which everything after that sort of flows.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a different way, I think, than the EIR looks at something. So I just wanted to make sure that we aren't under those same assumptions.
We would probably try to articulate what the assumptions are that they're using, and then we would say whether we think they're reasonable or not.
Okay.
Oftentimes, they're not that transparent, or maybe they just need to be restated.
I think transparency is something that can be very difficult to achieve, but I think it's good. And the other thing that I'm sure people want to hear is that ultimately, while the funding's coming from UPC for this project, it's coming through Brisbane, and Brisbane is the client. And so you're our guy, not their guy.
Absolutely correct. You're my client. You're the client for the firm, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to add anything?
I don't know if this helps or hinders or how it lays out, but Tim and I have actually been working on projects for about 22 years now. And as we'd like to do, we've yet to build anything, but we've sure studied the hell out of a lot of things.
And Clay keeps asking me to come back, so I suppose that's it. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mr.
All right,
Kelly.
thank you.
All right. So if there's no further...
Just kind of reminds me of this engineer I once knew who blew everything up in testing, but nothing ever got out the door.
Okay, so unless
Yeah.
there are any further conversation, maybe we have a motion for approval?
I make a motion to move forward with the contract with Kaiser Martin and Associates.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing no requests, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim.
We'll see you again.
Count on it.
Okay, so we move to old business. And this is the first item under old business is a follow-up discussion on the Economic Development Plan, which we had presented previously by the Economic Development Subcommittee, and also with the assistance of Mitch Bull from the Chamber. And it was kind of late, and so we agreed that we'd put it on a subsequent agenda to have some further conversation about it, as much as we'd like, I guess. So here we are, and let's see, would either the subcommittee or the staff want to start us off in the conversation, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, it'd probably be good just maybe have staff just kind of reiterate, what we got, and then kind of go from there. There's some things I'd like to discuss, at least from League of California Cities. I know that's later on the agenda, but I'd kind of like to
Filled it in?
Yeah, fill it in on this portion with regards to economic development.
Well, what we presented a couple weeks ago was the outlines of a plan that I think is more aptly described as kind of a process as opposed to a specific, what I would consider kind of an implementation plan. There's a number of things that we're looking at. The council has approved the charrette for the business park. We're going to be meeting later this month with the Economic Development Subcommittee to start outlining and working with the Urban Land Institute professionals that are going to come in on that. We're continuing to discuss the potential of broadband in the industrial park. We've had a number of meetings with the various representatives of property owners and brokers in the park, and I think we will continue to have that kind of dialogue. We've looked at events. We've had some conversations with the planners. That hasn't evolved as much as we maybe would have liked to have seen, but that's still, I think, something that's on the committee's radar screen. And then there's the whole, issues of the, hotel study that was brought forward in Sierra Point, and we've had discussions about that. Excuse me, losing my voice tonight. And I think that's, and then I think Mitch came in at the last meeting and gave a pretty robust report back on what he's kind of developed in terms of relationships in developing economic development approaches, and basically a lot of the stuff that we've been doing and continue to do. I think one of the issues that we're still wrestling with is the whole resources or staffing, or how we're going to manage the program. But certainly a partnership with the chamber is a key component of that, and I think that's something that we've been working on and developed pretty good. We haven't, either on the chamber side or the city side, really identified additional resources to kind of push that forward, but that's something that definitely is still on the radar screen of the subcommittee. I don't know if there's anything else that the subcommittee wants to delve into at this point or wants to highlight.
Well, I'd like to just kind of talk a little bit about, and this isn't necessarily directly about the plan that we've kind of presented with you a couple weeks back, but the economic development seminar that myself and Clay attended, actually Clay attended it too, up in Sacramento, and I was able to record it. I got the majority of it recorded, and problem was when I was downloading it, something corrupted and it wasn't able to download. and I can't download it on my computer now because it keeps telling me that it's there, but it's corrupted on my personal laptop. So I'm going to have Albert do it. And when they do it, I'd like to, at least share it with you all. Maybe we can even eventually put it on our website. But there is a lot of background noise because it was done in, wasn't held in a classroom type setting. It was held more in a box that was in a hall. And so there's a lot of background noise, but interesting things that were said there. A lot of things we've already kind of put into play, and they're talking about how important it is from doing a SWOT analysis, which kind of develops the, where you're at, where you want to go, who do you want to be, and about branding yourself or rebranding yourself, all the things that we've kind of been talking about doing. But one interesting feature that came out of it for me and was how it could be looked at on a wider swath, and that's from widening the circle. And I think, Ray, this is something you brought up, I think, when you first got back on the council about having more community involvement in the subcommittee level. And there was talk about the importance of having that to be able to get everybody involved. And it's kind of interesting because there was a lot of folks from other cities who shared what they were doing. And a lot of other cities had economic development directors, which was the go-to person. And I think this is one of the things that Cliff and I, have been batting around it. We know this is a budgetary item, and then, how do you quantify that? And, and it's not something that really shows up like in dollars and cents right away. It's like an investment that you're putting in this person, but, they're the go-to person, and right now we got about 6 or 7 people that are acting as that, collectively, but it's getting to a point, I think, that, we may really need to take a look at that in our next budgetary cycle on but it was very, very interesting, and certainly want to share it with you. And as Kevin was mentioning, talked about recreation, even the arts as part of being economic development, even though they may not see a direct effect, on it, and even your schools, that it really is kind of really being looked at as a holistic approach. So I thought it was quite educational and useful. So anyway, I want to share all that with you, and hopefully with the public, if we can get it online. But it's about 41, 42 minute session. So, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about this at a decent hour rather than so late in the evening.
No pressure.
Yeah, at our candidates forum last week, the majority of the questions that were asked from the public was, that were economic related. What are you going to do with, visitation? What are you going to do with the industrial park? There were so many questions about the industrial park, and I kept on having to say, we are going to have this charrette. We're going to have this public engagement. And I think, that's where you start. But you have to ask yourself, well, why are you doing it? I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, okay, we want to get public input. And that's great. But if you don't do something with it, then it's a waste of money. I think it's a waste of the community's time. If we're going to have the community come out and make an investment of their day and to provide feedback to the council, we have to be in a position to then initiate, to put something in place. As Clark has mentioned, a lot of the cities have a go-to person. We have kind of a cobbled collection of, a couple council members and staff and in the chamber, and we do a pretty good job, but I think we need someone who can take the information, not only that will come from the community, but also from us, and be able to put together a framework that we can build on and move forward with. In the staff report, there was a lot of information regarding our general plan. And we have these goals from the general plan, and we're supposed to implement those goals. But I think it's difficult for us to do it when we don't have that person that can make things happen. So, I hope that collectively we can come together as a council and make investment. I've said it, a couple times, in our finance committee meetings, that I really do think that, the economic person should be a sustainability person. Because, when you're looking at sustainability, it's about not only the environment, but it's about economics. It's about social equity. And someone who is diverse in those three areas, I think it's the right model that I think is Brisbane. We want to see some economic development so we can bring in some money for some of the services and programs that we like. We'd like to see some more restaurants. We'd like to see some amenities. But it should be done on our own terms. And, when you're thinking of economics, you need to be thinking about the environment. You need to be thinking about, what is our community? And, what do we like about it? And how do we, enhance the community's experience? So, Clark and I have been working on this thing for a few years, and sometimes you feel like, well, okay, you're putting forth these ideas, and the progress is slow, but I think the charrette is a first step. But I hope that we just, like we've done with some of the other community engagements, where we take that information and then just we put it on a shelf, and I hope that we use it. And, I think there's a lot of folks out there that would like to see us have some economic, I don't know. I mean, sometimes development sounds like, I don't know, like it's a bad word in Brisbane, and maybe it was, economic, enhancement.
Feasibility.
Or economic prosperity, done in a, sometimes a word, kind of throws things off, but, if we didn't have economic prosperity in our town, it'd be difficult to provide the services and programs that we all rely on and enjoy.
Okay. I have some questions, but Terry?
Go ahead.
Want me to go ahead? There are a number of things that I would like further understanding of. The one is this idea of the charrette, which has been talked about for quite a while now, but it's still not clear to me, one, exactly what it is and how it would work and what it would produce for us. It's not clear to me, so it's a question. Mm-hmm. And the more I thought about it, and so that's the first part of the charrette question. And the second part of the charrette question is, why are we limiting it to the industrial park and the Brisbane Village when we heard from Mitch that actually the bigger problem is Sierra Point in terms of occupancy? So anyway, my first question is, how does the charrette work, and how do we expect to get, or what are we expecting to get out of it? And two, why are we limiting the geographical area? Those are my two questions.
Okay. Stuart looks like he really wants to take that one on.
I don't know,
I mean, we certainly got. Oh, I was wrong. No. Okay, sorry.
I mean, this is as I stated earlier, this is going to come back to the subcommittee at the end of October, because we're going to be meeting with the consultants. I'd say consultants, the people who are volunteering their time to work on this with us, and then at that time, the idea is that we would bring back that whole package to the council for kind of final, direction on it and answer all those questions. In the meantime, I think probably what I could do is, I know John's been working on this pretty extensively, and I could have him kind of put together a report and bring that back to the council, maybe at your next meeting, and we can discuss that in a little bit more detail.
But maybe I can give some direct answers to, because it would be inclusive of, the quarry, Crocker Park, and, extend all out to, our park, with the village and everything like that. And the idea is, what would you like to see? And as far as from buildings to type of buildings or whatever, right? And it's like, would you want to see it like redeveloped, or leave it as the same, or add something to it? How would you look at it if it was a slate and money wasn't an issue? And the reason Sierra Point's not really included in that is because that's all basically been built rather modernly, and is zoned differently. Commercial zoning buildings, and you got a couple of approved projects that haven't been built at all. So, and it really had to do with the older Crocker Park style and the Bear Quarry. That's kind of it.
Yeah, like what Clark's saying is that, it's obvious that our downtown is underperforming, right? I mean, it isn't a really vibrant place, and we hear it from the community. You look at our Brisbane village, how many, vacancies are there, and, it needs some help. You look at the industrial park, and to me, it's nice that it's, 85 or 88% is occupied, but it still, as an economic engine, is underperforming. It provides a barrier between central Brisbane and the Ridge. So, like Clark was saying, we have kind of these old models that, really are underperforming for us. And so the only way to, to make it better is that you have to engage the community. And the community isn't just the citizens who live here, but it's also the property owners and the businesses that are part of Brisbane. And also, bringing in the quarry folks as well, so that everyone's at the table sharing their ideas of what they would like to see. And then you take that information, and then it'll go back to the subcommittee, and we'll work with URL, Urban Land Institute, ULI, sorry. I should just say it out. Urban Land Institute. And we'll work with them, and to see, what was the feedback that we got from the community. And of course, then we'll bring that back to the council. So, okay, well, this is what the community, as a whole, wants to do. But then, of course, what we then do with that information is kind of unknown.
It's a start, and it may end up going nowhere, and it may be a 30-year plan. Because one of the questions that came up last week was, what would you think about Crocker Park being turned into mixed use? Well, I don't know. That would something that'd have to be studied, but looking at it from a charrette point of view is to see what the community thinks of something like that, or whether that's even in their realm of something like that happening. You know, because we do got a lot of very good, viable businesses in Brisbane, and it's like, well, you don't want those businesses to leave, you know, what I mean? It's kind of a balance that you want to look at too. So really, it's kind of a visionary plan, the charrette is, and it's like, you know, whether you choose to go down that path or not, you know, then it would be the next step.
Yeah, this is like doing the survey of the Baylands. You know, you're trying to understand what is the pulse of the community, but it goes, you know, beyond the survey in that you're getting the feedback that is critical to then be able to recommend direction in the future.
I guess I'm a little uneasy about the whole concept, and I'll tell you what I'm uneasy about.
That's fine.
We certainly need a better idea about what can work to re-energize or rehabilitate or attract businesses to existing properties or develop properties that are there but haven't been looked at seriously. I think we need that sort of thing. But I'm a little bit worried about opening it up to sort of dreams, or you use the term visions, you know, because that can be a lot of wonderful, totally impractical, totally useless kind of stuff. And that is going to end up on the shelf, like you were saying before, Cliff. It seems to me that unless we design this, and this is what I'm getting at, in a way that gets the kind of information that, and information, ideas, specific possibilities that actually have some kind of practical implementation possibility, you know. Unless we're doing something like that, it strikes me as a big waste of time, to be perfectly honest. Because you can always sit down and have all kinds of wonderful dreams, you know, but you need to be more specific. Okay, so we got certain kinds of properties, we got certain kinds of constraints, we got certain kinds of possibilities. Okay, what can we do, and certain kinds of property ownership, certain kinds of brokers, all those things you guys been, you know, working with. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that if we don't structure it so that is all built in ahead of time, you bring together a bunch of people who don't know all that stuff, and you a lot of wheel spinning and a lot of, you know, wonderful dreams, and you don't really have much. And that's kind of what worries me about the process, unless it's more specified and structured and set ahead of time, so we got some kind of parameters that we know what we're dealing with. Well, you see my concern?
Yeah, but that's kind of what
they're there.
It's kind of what we have to put together, that structure.
Yeah.
Of what those guidelines are, because this is going to only be a one-day thing.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and so it has to be structured,
right,
you know, in a very concise way.
Right.
Okay, that this is what we look at, and that all would come back before the council before we even went forward with something like this. So,
right,
you know, and that's, you know, I mean, your feedback is good, you know, on what you're talking about, because that is something that, you know, needs to happen. But by the same token, you want to kind of allow some latitude for some creative juices to flow too.
Well, sure.
Yeah. So that.
But that can get out of control.
And that's finding. Well, that's finding the balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You know, I'm saying here it is. So.
Yeah, you know, I mean, in the economic development plan, you know, there's the SWOT analysis, right? And so you build upon that analysis of what are the strengths, you know, what are the opportunities, what are the weaknesses, what are the threats. You know, I think of, you know, our sustainability plan that we're working on. You know, it helped that there was already a plan in place, the Sonoma Mountain Village project, and we use that as a framework. But, you know, eventually it evolved to, there's really no signs of the Rohnert Park development. It's the Brisbane development. And so But you know that that plan is really, it started as dreams and aspirations, yeah, and then, we've gotten more feedback from our different advisory groups, gotten some feedback from the community. And eventually that plan will be what we use, I think, this is just my opinion, but that it'll be used to help shape what the planning process will be for the Baylands development. And so this charrette is, part of that puzzle. Clark is right. I mean, you can't just, and you're right too, you have to have some framework, and I think that we are providing some framework. The Urban Land Institute has done this lots of times, and they will bring their framework to what we hope to achieve by, constructively using the community's input to put forth, various options. So I'm quite confident that we'll have something, that it won't just be, okay, have your say day, and you just throw out, ideas. It'll be in a structured format. But the ultimate plan in the end is going to be shaped by us eventually, with the help of the community and staff. But you have to start somewhere.
Do you want to say something, Terry? I sort of see it in your eyes.
It's hard to know where to start because I've been, taking notes as far as what the charrette may want to do or may want to accomplish. And I understand that, the goal would be to invigorate that area of the Crocker and the village area, invigorate and attract businesses and have it what might be economically sustainable over the long haul. And what I'm hearing about a charrette is that, we'd bring in stakeholders, the community and businesses, and see what they would like to do and have in the long run. But have your say day. I mean, we're going to have a repeat of that where people with great intentions and great dreams for Brisbane will come and say, I'd love to see, this would be perfect, that would be perfect, this would be perfect. But we have existing businesses. It's 85% full. I can't see where we're going to tell one of our existing businesses that they aren't in our prescribed plan, and so they aren't going to be as welcome as someone who may be in a prescribed plan. And so it seems to me that, a charrette to see what the community pulse is, or a survey out on the Baylands where we've got raw land and have a choice on what emerges or what might be feasible or what might be economically beneficial. In the industrial park, you're rewriting a canvas. So it really changes how you can't just take the big eraser unless the big earthquake hits and levels it for us. We're not going to have that opportunity to come in with the big eraser and say, oh no, we don't like this, we want to add this in here. So
Can I address that? Unless you still have more to that point, because I know you got a lot of stuff there, but if I,
Go ahead.
The thing about the eraser thing. You're right. We already have a park that's built out, but those buildings are old. They're at the point where their life is, doesn't have very much left in it. we have certain zoning that's out there. If you change the zoning, you change the equation, you provide perhaps more opportunity that doesn't exist right now. That then makes someone who owns that property say, well, okay, well, I didn't think I could do that. This is what the property was zoned for today, but it seems like the community is looking at a different look for the industrial park. Just like where we rezoned the 3 warehouses across the street, to mixed use, because we decided, okay, well, we don't want a freight forwarder across the street from the park, and but we set it up in a way where we're not taking those rights away from you. We put out the opportunity. This is what the community would like to see. And if it works for you, then okay, then let's do it. And maybe at this stage of the game it doesn't, but maybe later on down the line it does. Like Clark was saying, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's a long process. It's like the Baylands will be a long process too.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's up to the property owners on whether they wanted to do something with it, is what it's really going to come down to, as with anything. Same is true with Visitation Avenue. Got property owners that they're not willing to do something, it's not going to happen unless they got some kind of incentive to do something and some kind of money.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's also, the city providing some direction, providing some guidance, and then, putting something, some skin in the game. You talk about the properties that people own on Visitation. Well, we own properties too. And we have money, and we could be doing some things, that would enhance our economic development, like Kevin was talking about, the arts, Clark, recreation is part of economic development. Well, those community things add to the overall economic climate of our area. So sorry for cutting in on there, but
I think that having a well thought out long-term land use objective is a good idea. I'm not sure if the charrette will achieve that. I'm certainly not convinced that an economic developer, economic director, who is also the correlating with the sustainability factor, is the best bet. I think that attracting or being very pro-business, bring in rainmaker, bring in businesses to a community is not always the environmental partner or a good environmental marriage with that kind of thing. And so I'm not convinced on that, and that's where we sort of started with part of this conversation, was hiring someone who can make our buildings fill up and I think that is something that is a very specialized kind of thing, and it's...
Well, if I may, Terry, it comes down to defining that, and that's kind of what we're doing with the brand of who we want to be, what kind of businesses we want in here, so that we're defining that so that we can attract those type of businesses that we want, and then we make it easy for them to locate here and not, go through 3 to 6 months of, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. Oh, rules change, you got to do this. Oh, by the way, you know what I mean? Where within the plan, we say, this is who we want to target. This is who we want to go after. These other businesses here, we don't wish for maybe some of them to be here because they're not, they don't fit that brand that we want of who we want to be. So that really is kind of defining that within the plan. So,
and I think if you took 10 people in Brisbane and said, who do you want us to be? We're going to get 6.5 different answers on who we want to be. And so I mean, I think it's great, the work that you're doing. I do feel that the charrette and the surveys and those kind of things, one of the comments made during the candidates' night was an offhand comment about, well, we all know how much we trust the surveys that are going around right now. And so there is a question in the residents' opinions of, is a survey or a have your say day or a charrette going to bring my ideas forward, or are they going to be dismissed after we spend time and waste time and have them turned around and changed? So I think there's some worry about that in the community, about what's the point of doing certain things if we don't have the control over them? And if it is just a wish list, is it just spinning our wheels to increase the size of us and our programs and or is it beneficial to Brisbane individuals? I mean, and I think those are the questions that people have. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the recent survey that's out right now, I mean, that's, that's from a corporation, right? The other surveys that have been out recently have been from corporations.
Yeah.
But, when the survey goes out from the city for the Baylands, right, all of us are going to, review all those questions to make sure that those questions are appropriate and that they're not biased. And that if something is biased, we're going to change it. We're not going to put that product out to the community because we want the community's feedback. It's essential for us to govern. This charrette is essential for getting the community's feedback and their ideas, because we've been hearing the chatter out there. People want things. They'd like there to be more restaurants. They'd like to have perhaps a better grocery store that's not so far away. They like to have a pharmacy. And how do you make those things happen? So then you go, okay, well, what are the things that we can do as a city? And part of that economic development plan talks about rezoning. And that is a huge tool that the city has, to change things. I mean, we can't tell a developer, that you got to, tear down your building and make it green, but we have a green building ordinance just in case, they do decide to do that. Right? We're planning for the future, and sometimes the future takes a while.
Well, just remember, this is the charrette is just a small piece of this economic development plan. That's one of, like we said at the beginning, more futuristic, and so we'll come up with something that's more defined, and then when it comes back to the council, we can take a look at it and then massage it. And, may ultimately, you might say, yeah, I still don't see any use for this, but, let us have the opportunity to bring that back and, with the feedback that you're giving currently, and see what we can come up with before we move forward.
Well, so many of the things that Cliff mentions that people would want a grocery store or a pharmacy or a gas station or any of those things require density of people to support them. And I think that a Trader Joe's can tell you how many people it would take to support a Trader Joe's store, how many customers, how many warm bodies through that door.
At what income levels?
And at what income levels. And they'll be able to tell you if a store is feasible, or a pharmacy is feasible, or a high school is feasible. All of those require density of people that are going to be there and supporting those businesses. And we all talk about shopping locally or that kind of thing. And if it's not up to standards, we're not going to do it there. And so it all comes down to density and what's going to support what businesses.
You know, I agree that having critical mass is important. I mean, it's a huge factor. Accessibility is a big factor as well. And location. Remember, to get to a shop in Brisbane, you've got to come into Brisbane. A lot of people will go along Bayshore, and they just keep going. Perhaps if the village or the property next to the village had access to Bayshore, that might provide an opportunity to a store. Maybe it's not a Trader Joe's, but maybe it's a Good Life or a Buy Right, something that's smaller, more boutique. It's easy for us to say, what's not going to be here and this can't be here. But it's up to the entrepreneur who's out there. And certain conditions need to be in place in order for that entrepreneur to make the investment. And if and of course they're going to look at critical mass, but they're going to look at the other things as well. And if we can provide an opportunity to bring to bring down some barriers so that we can maybe possibly make it feasible, we should do that, as long as we do not disrespect the environment or our social fabric. And I don't think bringing in some of those things would.
I don't know, my mind's just going and listening to the conversation, and one of the things that just sort of crossed my mind is that maybe what we need first is to hear from the people who own the property and the business owners or the potential entrepreneurs, as you indicate. What do you think is feasible for Brisbane? And what do you need in order to locate here or to do a more successful job of marketing the business, the warehouses or offices or what have you that you haven't been able to fill? What do you think is the problem? Is there something standing in the way, or is there something that needs to be changed in city policy? Get a whole bunch of stuff from the people who are making these decisions.
Who can make them.
Yeah, right. Right. And then maybe that might be I'm just thinking of a two-phase thing. And they're going to come up with some things that we like, and they're probably going to come up with some things that we may not like, And then the second phase is, okay, this is what business people are saying. Then let's take it to the community and say, okay, so how much of this is okay with you?
Well, we've been doing
that.
Yeah, but I mean,
we have had that conversation with the brokers.
Yeah, but it hasn't been a public conversation. I haven't seen any list of things like that's specific. You guys have had a lot of fascinating conversations that you've sort of partially reported to us, and it's been good. The work you're doing with the commercial brokers is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about whole geographical areas, it does seem to me that we need some sense from all the people out there who have some decision-making power to find out what it is that's troubling them, or what is it that's standing in the way, or what is it they would like to enhance the potential,
Yeah.
And then find out whether it's something we can live with.
You bring up a good point. This information has been presented to the council. It was in Mish's report. It was a very lengthy description of the chain of events that occurred while she was working with the city. And it included all of the broker meetings. It included the feedback from the brokers, that our reputation, is not very good, and because they feel that Brisbane's not a city that, is good to do business And we were saying, wait a minute, that perception is not correct. We do want to work with our businesses, and we do want to grow our economic base. And those brokers thought that those meetings were extremely helpful. Again, this SWOT analysis, looking at those, that information. We've brought in, Charles and Judy Ng on a couple of occasions, because they're the ones who own the Brisbane Village, and their thing was they had misinterpretation of what they could do with their particular commercial space. And sometimes it's a lack of communication. And so we've gotten the feedback, and now we need to bring it to the community to hear what the community has to say, and then taking all that information and then putting forth a plan. We've already presented it, before.
Well,
Not what I'm asking for.
kind of, yeah. It's,
I mean, you presented those things you just mentioned, but that's not what I was talking about.
I know, but it's been documented, and you've had the document. So it's been in
Not
writing.
what I'm looking for.
yeah.
You're talking about a different set of things, and which are fine. I mean, but that's not what I'm looking for in terms of the whole charrette idea. It's a different set of information.
You're wanting something more defined.
Right.
With the brokers and the property owners
Right.
first.
Right.
Before we delve into it to see if they're even willing to participate, and then what is it that you really want
Right.
that may help
Right.
move forward, and think you getting the gist of this, Clay?
Part of
Still listening?
So, I mean,
Yeah.
and the reason I'm looking at staff is because, they, get the ideas, write down the notes and stuff, and so before we pull the trigger on, okay, let's go, and then
Right.
Maybe
Right.
you get 25% participation or something you want.
Right.
Yeah, you're hoping this is, we recommunicate it and get full participation and do some more prerequisite work before we delve into that. Is
Right.
that
That's you're getting it.
okay?
Okay,
Got it.
but
Got it.
part of the issues with the brokers, I said, part of it is our the perception of Brisbane, but a lot of it has to do with the buildings themselves
Okay.
and the competition that we have to go against, which has been in these documents. A lot of the stuff it's out of our hands,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
But what we
Which is
can do.
one of my points.
I know, but again, it's been in the document. It talks about rezoning. It talks about trying to have engagement with our property owners. Clark has talked about having doing some events. And the brokers have given us good feedback on that. I mean, just having the brokers come to City Hall and talk with a couple of council members is huge compared to how it used to be. And so, all the things that you're asking for, I feel that we've already have done those things, and now we're at this one point where it'd be nice to then get the community's feedback and then weigh it against the analysis that has already been generated. I mean, you're seeing a very, kind of taking bits and pieces from the information that has already been gathered. But, I think if you feel like you need more information, staff can regurgitate some of the previous staff reports and provide that to you.
I think we'll just go back and revisit it, and then put together something, and then if we need to bring the brokers and the owners in, because we really haven't had the owners that I recall, but.
We did. We had the representatives.
We had one rep. So.
The thing about Crocker, as Clark, is that we have like a handful of companies that own most of the buildings.
Well, what I'm hearing is I'm hearing Ray not being convinced, and I'm not hearing Terry thoroughly convinced either, and so that means that we're not really going to move forward until we kind of or help them bridge this over. And
Well, I think I mean,
If I'm hearing it
well, I think we, as a council, we have budgeted the charrette to do it. Yeah, and so we have this economic development plan, which isn't something that we've asked the council to say, to sign off on. It's really just to provide feedback. So, okay, this is where, this is what has come out of this subcommittee. But, you're providing feedback, which then we take back to our subcommittee, and, we'll tinker around with it. I think, to just keep delaying and delaying and delaying, you won't get anywhere, and it's frustrating.
well, what I'm hearing though is we're not really going to move anywhere or even get the charrette done, because it would require, even though we budgeted it, council approval.
Well, we'll just, maybe we just wait until we have a 5-member council then. If we don't think that reaching out to the community is a good thing,
I think you're totally missing the point.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Keep
You're missing
delaying
the
it.
point.
Sorry.
You're missing the point. You're
no.
not listening.
I am listening.
No, you're
But you're
not.
not paying attention to the information that's already been provided to you.
No, you're not comprehending what I see as the problem, and so we got a communication issue.
Yeah, no. Sure.
And I don't think it's a question of, delaying or so forth. It's a question of, if we're going to spend money on a charrette, let's do it right. Let's get something out of it that's actually going to work for us. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that I don't think we have done our homework yet, so far as I can tell, in terms of preparing ourselves for something of that nature. Now, you've done a lot of preparatory work, I agree. But I don't see any structure for the charrette that's necessarily going to produce a very useful result. Now, what I'm asking for is for you all to make a recommendation in that regard, which you have all the basic information to do. I agree. But you haven't given any kind of structure for how this thing is going to work or how we're going to move to the next stage. That's what I'm asking for.
Well, that's partly the purpose of the meeting on the 29th, is it?
Yeah, as I started this conversation off a while back, that's what I said. This is to the subcommittee on the 24th and then to the council. So I, am hearing what the concerns are. I'm sure the subcommittee is hearing those. And the idea was that we're going to come back to the council with a fully fleshed out.
Technical difficulties.
Fully fleshed out proposal in terms of how we're going to move forward.
Right.
And what the input. I do want to just, the idea of the Urban Land Institute is that it gets funneled through professionals in the field. So this is not a process to just get everybody's ideas. It's to get professional input in terms of a direction that you may want to go. Your implementation strategy down the line very likely is to be zoning types of things. It could be certain infrastructure sorts of improvements. And I also would say that, all we have to do is look north to our friends from San Francisco who spend a lot of time on these types of things and change neighborhoods all the time. All the neighborhoods are constantly evolving in San Francisco. Some of that's really organic. Some of it is because they really put a concentrated effort into doing certain things. So we can change Crocker Park if that's what we want to do. It isn't, we know that's not an overnight sort of thing. It's a long-term sort of thing. And that's the whole idea of the charrette, was trying to get our hands around a long-term vision, but one that's based in reality and one that's got some potential of being able to be implemented and then coming up with strategies to implement it.
Right. Because you know, for me anyway, just saying that professionals are coming in doesn't turn me on at all. Because unless these professionals really are well-informed and have a clear idea of what we want, and they know what's there and so forth, you know, they're not going to be very useful. Just being professional doesn't do it. They've got to have appropriate and useful information as well.
And they're in the
that's
process.
kind of that's the process, yes.
And that's the process that they're going through right now. And so what I also indicated was that, you know, I'd have John come back with a report. And I think maybe at the next meeting, it'd be good just to say, okay, here's the work that's been done to date. Here is the process that staff anticipates working with the subcommittee and working with ULI, because I think it'll give you a lot of information. If I had known we were going to get this deep into this subject tonight, I would have asked him to stay. He's not here. He's really the person who's been hands-on with this. So if you would give the opportunity for him to come back at the next meeting, we'll be also working with the subcommittee, and then I think bringing forward to you in November a fully fleshed out approach to this. I think all the conversation tonight, I haven't really disagreed with anybody, but I think a lot of it just, and again, I apologize that I didn't realize that this was going to be kind of the focus of our conversation. Otherwise, I would have asked John to.
Well, this was an organic conversation.
Apparently, this is.
We were responding to each other since we actually have the time to do it.
I recognize these things happen sometimes. So,
yeah, which we usually don't. Yeah, right.
But
yeah.
John is, you know, been working on this, and he's the staff person that's hands-on, and I think he can answer a great deal of the questions that have come up here. And, you know, we can work towards coming to a program that, you know, we obviously want everybody to be supportive of the way we're going to approach it, just like all the stuff we're doing on the Baylands. We got everybody behind the approach, and then we go from there and flesh out the information and see what we want to do with it in terms of moving it to the next step.
You know, like, for instance, you know, Cliff was talking about the SWOT analysis, and, you know, we have this very high-level one in the you know, earlier report, but it's not really specific to any particular geographical area. And the problems that exist on visitation are one, the problems that exist on the Brisbane Village are another, the problem that exists in Crocker Park are another, exists on Sierra Point or another. I mean, they all have different, you know, strengths and weaknesses, and each has to be analyzed separately in order to have, use the word, a realistic plan. And I think we're all in favor of that. I mean, that's not really something that we disagree on. The question is, okay, how do we get there? What are the specifics of this process? You know, what kind of structure do we follow to get there? And I think we want to get there as expeditiously as we can.
And how do we bring in the property owners, whether they be the business owners in Crocker or the property owners on visitation? How do we include those so that we get a good product?
Right.
Because you're going to have that buy-in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, although I don't think what we're talking about now is not focused on Visitation Avenue. It's focused on. If
any of those would have the same
issue. If we're going to have a development plan, it's got to focus on all the areas of town.
Ultimately.
Yeah, sure.
I do think we have to kind of take it one step at a time.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Towns, even our small town's a big town.
Yeah, right. But that's the point, that all the sub-areas are different.
Right.
Well, this particular charrette, I think, is more focused with Corey and Crocker Park and the Brisbane Village, just kind of like that.
That card.
Swath right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, ultimately, you know, whatever product we put out there, we want it to be successful.
Sure.
So, yeah. So I'm glad that you're going to do that, Clay. Put that stuff together. I mean, you know, you want to go into this saying everybody for it, rather than, you know, like not supporting it.
Well, it won't go anywhere.
Well, but I mean, you know, look at everyone's got their own thing though too, right? And you know, maybe you know someone doesn't want to see development. Maybe they just like it the way that it is. I remember a former council member here at the dais and said, you know, I like the way that you know downtown Brisbane is, and I wouldn't change a thing. And it's like, okay, well then, maybe you'll do whatever it takes not to make change. So, but I'm glad that we're all, I don't know, do we want to see, something happen? I mean, if we shouldn't have the charrette unless there's a majority of the council that thinks that it would be good for us to have, a different change in Crocker Park, to make the village.
Well, I think we're just defining things for the future as if we're taking a look at, whether that happens or not, because, chances are, none of us would be sitting here when change starts to take place. So it's an evolutionary thing. You say, okay, and, as I said, it really is visionary of stepping out and saying, okay, we know one of the things that we've identified is that our industrial park is an older industrial park in the Bay Area. So, we want to take a look at that and see, how are we going to evolve in the future? Are we just going to stay the same, and then, it might end up being a desolate area? But right now we do have some very viable businesses there.
Right.
It kind of is developing our brand and businesses that we really do want, and it's like, that may work. But then again, it may not. So, so we really need to look at that. And there is, communities changing too. What I've seen from some of the questions the other night, that those questions are kind of defining change, so. And so we have to really be cognizant of that,
Okay.
Can I make one little comment?
Sure.
Sustainability and revitalization does not necessarily mean growth. It doesn't have to mean that. We don't always have to have more to achieve what we need to achieve on the level we're at. And so I think everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt when it comes to that.
No, absolutely.
So when council member says, well, maybe you just want things to stay the same. And in some respects, I do want the feel of Brisbane to stay the same. That's why I love it here. And so I don't necessarily think that not trying to expand and grow is necessarily a bad thing. It's not always a necessary thing. And I would love, I hear people who are in the financial area talk about, growth, and that you need to have growth to be healthy. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes being stable and being able to keep up with your inflationary rates is what it takes to keep and maintain a really great community and a vibrant community. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, I agree with you completely, because you cannot grow your way out of problems or anything like that. Like I said, this is looking into the future, that, something that, like I said, our park is getting older, and that, are we going to be able to sustain and maintain, the businesses that we have? And, it might very well come out that that's what we got, and this will work. But, for how long? And we need to look at that. We need to look at that as part of our sustainability plan for the future, for, these next generations coming up. And, of course, when it comes down to if you find that change does need to happen or something, like that next generation is going to have at least somewhat of a foundation to work with, say, wow, these guys were kind of visionary.
You just kind of peel back the onion, and you look at, our park across the street, and what was there before. I think the park is a great asset. I think, having the pool is a great asset to the community. Kevin Fryer coming before us tonight and talking about the Mission Blue facility. You can have things, and they don't have to, just because you're adding things doesn't mean that you're taking away from something. You can enhance. And when I look at at the Crocker Industrial Park, I see there being opportunities to make the park more efficient, more in line with our values. I don't think you'd find too many people out there saying that freight forwarding in the industrial park is like something I want to, I grew up with it and I want to like keep it as part of my, my living here in Brisbane. No, I mean, you want to make it better. And people don't like to see vacancies in the village. They want to have some restaurant choices to go to. They want to be able to spend their money in Brisbane. So so I look at it from a sustainability perspective, and so just because I want to see some development in town doesn't mean that I want to give up what we all cherish about our town. I want to make it better, just like the things that we've added to our community have made things better. So just throwing it out there.
Okay.
We're doing our best to extend this meeting to 10:30.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we ready to move on to the next item?
Yes.
Are we?
I am.
Ready?
I am.
Okay. This was your request, Cliff, that we have some discussion on the whole airport noise situation and the FAA new programs they're developing and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know,
Yes.
you want to take the lead on that, or do you want to have a staff person say something? Or what's the plan?
So, during, while you guys were at the League California Cities Conference, there was a meeting at the TRACON facility that I attended. It was a joint venture with the airport SFO Roundtable, which is our noise outreach organization on the peninsula, and we combined our efforts with the Oakland Noise Forum. And so we went up there, got an introduction to the new Metroplex system that is going to be in place. Then we got to, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Then we went into the control area, which was quite fascinating because I got to go, it's kind of like a octagon-shaped room, and I got to go to the section that shows all of the departing flights coming out of SFO, coming out of San Jose, and Oakland. And so I was able to sit behind one of the screens and just watch the air traffic controller do his job. And it's a very intense position. You can't mess around. You can't make a mistake when you're in that role. And so, but it was quite interesting to see, like, okay, yeah, I see this Oakland flight coming on the radar, and that's why this SFO flight is coming across Brisbane when it's coming across Brisbane. But then, of course, you'd see some flights coming over Brisbane that you go, well, where's the rationale behind that? And sometimes it is just, these guys are programmed.
Pilot choice.
One of the things I learned was that, the port flights, the ones that they fly out towards the bay and then they make the left turn and come over Brisbane, those are all directed by TRACON. It isn't the pilots doing this. It's all the TRACON telling the pilot to turn sooner sometimes than later. And, so I asked the guy who was our advisor, why is that plane turning? And his explanation was that it's anticipating the Oakland flight. Sometimes, the Oakland flight gets delayed, but the guy is already anticipating the Oakland flight's going to come, and so he makes the flight turn, even if the airspace is clear. So, that was interesting. Where there's the pilot air is the shoreline flights. So these flights, they're supposed to go out towards South San Francisco, and they make the turn across the bay to go east. But what happens is that sometimes the pilots don't make the turn fast enough, and so they're supposed to go straight through the gap and then out towards the Golden Gate Bridge. But they go, oh, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm going to make the turn anyways. And then that's when we get that buzz cut over Brisbane. It's because the pilot has made that choice. So I have a meeting coming up with this subcommittee to look at strategies, and one of which is, taking a short-term strategy and trying to come up with some parameters for the height of the flights that are coming from Oakland, because a lot of the pushback from SFO or TRACON, really, who is coordinating all the flights, is that, well, you need to have a certain amount of airspace so that it's safe. And you have to always respect that. There haven't been, any crashes in our airspace. And so they're doing their job, but can they do it better? And of course, yes, we all believe that they can. And so perhaps having greater height, they just need 1,000 feet of space, vertical, to have it be deemed safe. But the horizontal is much greater. I'm kind of blanking out on that space, but it's 3 miles, Clay, the horizontal space. It's pretty significant amount of space horizontally, but vertically is only 1,000 feet, right? I mean, it's weird, it's just, so anyways, trying to come up with higher standards for both flights as they're coming over. So that's kind of short term, and working with Oakland. The long term is, I had this meeting at Jackie Spear's office. And so it was Jackie Spear and Anna Eshoo. So it was a joint effort, because not only is Brisbane being affected by the airplane noise, but also down in Woodside. So they have those oceanic flights that are coming over. But also, when a plane can't land, then it's turned around. And so those flights are providing noise impacts for Woodside. And they're big planes. They're the 747s and bigger. So that's why Anna Eshoo was involved, because she represents that area. So this person, her name is Patty McDaniel. She's she works for TRACON, and she is coordinating the Metroplex system in our area, which is a GPS-based system, so that the flights will be on these set patterns. And it's supposed to provide efficiency. Of course, they look at efficiency as, time and fuel, but they're not looking at efficiency in the form of, less impact on noise that the people below are experiencing. And so she, in one of her slides, she laid out the different boxes of the timetable. But what was not in the timetable was community participation. So there's the comment period, and that's much different than actually being able to change the plans. Our EIR process, we are quite involved with the planning of it. And when you have land use, you have other tools at your disposal. But when you're talking about the airspace, we don't have any tools, right? Right. So the creator of the plan, as well as the enforcer, is the same. And so that's a problem. And so in order to then, at least try and, have our voices heard, at the meeting, I said, hey, we need to have something in place to allow us to participate. And luckily, Jackie Spear endorsed that. And she said, hey, you need another box. So they are going to put something together that will then provide an opportunity. And so I made a suggestion that we form a Metroplex, or they call it, anyways, so a Metroplex Action Committee. So that it made up of a couple of members of each noise group, a staff member from each congressional office and a staff member from each county jurisdiction. And so that then we could all sit at the table and look at the flight routes and see if there's anything that we can change with those flight routes before it goes to the public for comment. So that's where we are right now.
That sounds good stuff. I just, on the shoreline departure, Cliff, I know that in the past that I think when SEPI was a representative, they went to the airlines and asked them not to fly over Brisbane. That actually Virgin America has complied with that. But other airlines said no, like Southwest, United, a few others, that they're not complying with that, that the pilots take over and they do it and they just, and
Yeah.
And I know right now is one of the things that is not really being allowed is sanctions on airlines. And to me, one of the things that needs to happen is they have to be sanctioned for their noise levels of what they're putting on this nuisance on the community. And maybe that's something you could talk about on doing it, is getting our congressional people to start kicking these airlines in the pocketbook, because to me, that's the only thing that's going to change some of these airlines' behavior. The Virgin American seems to be able to comply with this, so why can't these other airlines? You know what I mean? It's because they don't want to.
Yeah, well,
That's what it comes down to, and the only way that we can make them change their behavior as an airline is to cost them money.
Yes. No,
It's going to cost them more money than it is by them turning left too soon. In other words, flying over Brisbane. So
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that was surprising to me. That came up in the Jackie Spear meeting, was that, and Clay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that there is a mechanism to apply fees when pilots, go outside the normal, flight route. And, of course, the pilot, they have a lot of discretion. So, safety and things like that. And so, okay, well, you can always use the safety card, why you did what you did.
But that's all
so, yeah, you're right. And so, but, I'm glad you brought this up, Clark, because SFO has been doing some remodeling at their facility, and so they will be closing the port runway to make it compliant with some regulation that they need to do. And so they will close this runway, which will mean that there will be more flights going out of the shoreline. And so we'll get some relief from the port flights, but I guarantee you that we will get a lot more buzz cuts from the shoreline flights because they'll have more volume coming in off of those flights that will then eventually come our way. So
how long is that going to last?
It's going to last probably 2 to 3 months. Of course, the folks that live in San Bruno, South San Francisco, who already have the hugest, or have the largest, I should say, noise impacts, will get it even worse when the runways are being worked on, because a lot of those flights fly right over them.
Yeah, something, city attorney. I just need to know, and I want to ask this publicly, because if on our books is a noise ordinance or a nuisance ordinance, and airplane noise can be construed as nuisance to an individual, that
I think it certainly can be, having experienced airplane noise going over my residences. I think it could be classified as a nuisance. The issue is whether or not the city would have jurisdiction to deal with it because of the FAA coverage and the exclusive jurisdiction that it may have in terms of airplane flights.
Well, I'm not really going there with the city doing it. I'm just talking about individual residents. If they chose to file a small claims lawsuit in the court because of a nuisance overhead flight, that it's disrupting their life, would they fall in that same category, or are they exempt from that? Because to me, it seemed like, it's for jurisdictions, but not individuals.
Yeah.
And is that something you could check on, or would you know?
As an individual, you can certainly file a claim against against anyone. They wouldn't be subject to the same preemption that the city would. In terms of the defense that the airline might provide, they may very well argue or have some statutory defense that I'm not currently aware of, but there's nothing that would preclude an individual that I can think of from taking that action purely as an individual.
Okay. I was curious about that, so thank you.
Okay, so this Metroplex Action Committee sounds like a good idea. And getting in on the ground floor is the only way there's going to be much influence in what comes out. So I think if that can be carried off, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, any other questions or points on this?
Very good.
Yeah,
Cliff,
very good work, yeah. Right. Okay, shall we move ahead and finish? Mm-hmm. All right. Moves on to staff reports. City manager?
City clerk's got the first item.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So as you recall, the council formed the Complete Street Safety Committee back in June, and 7 members of the public were appointed to that committee. And in the last month and a half, 3 of those members have resigned just due to personal reasons. So now there's 4 members of the committee. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention, number one. I did have somebody call and is interested in applying, so that potentially could bring it up to 5 if the council so chose to appoint that person. But anyways, overall, with all our committees and commissions, I'll be recruiting now in the next month, and then you'll be doing your appointments in January anyways, for the Park and Rec, for the planning, for open space, all of the open terms. So you could look at this whole issue at that time, or decide that you want to have a full 5 to 7 member committee before then. And I guess I just wanted your direction, or to at least for you to be aware of what it was, where they stood. So,
How do the 4 current members feel?
I think I've heard from the chair that she would like, Chair Colleen Mackin, that she would like an additional member. So probably that's why I'm bringing it to you tonight rather than waiting till January.
Well, even if we were to begin the recruitment now and notify, we're in October already. Are we really convinced that we could procure another member before January?
Well, she said somebody's interested.
So Joel Diaz called and was interested, and he attended a meeting and heard that there was a vacancy, so he was thinking of filling out an application, which I don't have yet. But so that's a possibility if you wanted to fill a seat sooner than January.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
David. So we have a 7-member committee. So now we're down to 4. Can we? I guess we have this floating. It's 5 or 7. So how does that affect having a quorum?
I'd have to look at the bylaws for the committee. I'm not sure, without taking a look at that, it hasn't been an issue that has come up before, although if you have 7 members and you have 4 that are left.
Say you only have 3 show up at a meeting.
If you only have 3 show up at a meeting, that would, generally, that wouldn't be a quorum if you have a 7-member group. I mean, if you have 4, that would be a quorum, then you need a majority of those showing up. So you could pass something with 3 votes out of the 4. I think if you had 3, you'd have a problem with getting a quorum.
Yeah, but we have this committee that's set up as 5 or 7, so I'm just, it kind of sounds like some gray area there.
Okay.
But if we made it just 5, then we'd be good.
Yeah. And looking at the way it was structured, it says the Complete Street Safety Committee shall consist of between 5 and 7 members. So you have, doesn't have to be 7, but it looks like you should have at least 5 members on the committee.
Should have at least 5. And then so just right now, the way that it's structured, if we didn't, they had another meeting and only 3 showed up, would they still have a quorum then? Because we have it should be 5 or 7, or 5 to 7, or...
And my understanding is that there were 7 and 3 left, so we're down to 4.
Okay. So we've kind of set what the body should be. It should be, it's 7 right now then.
Well, it began as 7. It's unusual to have a situation where you've got a range. Usually
I know.
you have a set number. I mean, if pushed, I'd make the argument that with 5 as a minimum and you had 4, that you could have a quorum. But I
Yeah, I know that, yeah. Just 3.
But I think it's probably with 3, you're probably pushing it. I think again you could make the argument because 5 is the minimum, but it would be safer and certainly probably advisable, given that the bylaws require 5 to 7 to have 5 as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think so. And we have someone who's interested, so.
So do we want to, but we should make it an open invitation.
I think we need to make it an open invitation and not,
We can make an open invitation for applicants for this committee and say by the end of October, and then we could decide at the first meeting in November.
that's fine.
Yeah, that works.
Perhaps we could put it on the city blog and also ask the current sitting members if they can make a recommendation or at least put the information out to people in their sphere.
Okay,
And perhaps we can announce this again at our next meeting.
right.
As just as an announcement, maybe early in the meeting, when people who might be still tuning in to us and hadn't had their fill might be listening more closely than they will be at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay. We can do that, right? Okay, good. All right. Report from league meeting.
I'll go ahead and start this off. We had 4 of us go to the league meeting, myself and 3 of the council members, and I'll let the 3 council members speak to items that they covered or workshops that they went to. The 2 things I'd report out on are the city manager's department of the league has developed 4 task forces to input to the league board on policy issues. And one of those is economic development strategy, basically, what the next phase of what was the old redevelopment is going to take place in the state. And as we know that there's some inertia on the state level, particularly in the governor's office, to move forward on that. But there does seem to be some indication that at some point in the future there's going to be a desire to create new policy in that area. So I volunteered to participate in that, and will be participating in that through the league city manager's department. The other item which you'll be hearing more about in the future, and particularly Councilmember Conway, who sits on the JPA for the ALS, is I attended a workshop and have had subsequent discussions with our fire chief about the ability of local communities to charge for a fee for the paramedic response services that we provide and be able to bill those against insurance agency or insurance businesses or insurance companies, excuse me, and also get reimbursements through the federal government. This is an area that's kind of opened up. It's not really part of the Affordable Care Act, which is kind of your first response is that maybe that's something in that, but this is actually old federal policy that hasn't been taken advantage of. It's pretty complicated. It was a presentation provided by the Sacramento Fire District, and there are some limitations in terms of how we provide the service in San Mateo County, but there does appear to be some potential revenue in that area. So we'll be discussing that further, probably be working it through the joint powers agreement that we're involved with the advanced life support, and then ultimately bringing it back through the city councils. But I think that's probably going to be a 6-month to a year process before you hear anything further about that. Those are kind of the two unique items that I've attended. I did attend the economic development workshop that Clark alluded to earlier. So I'll leave it up to the council members to report on items that they attended.
So, who wants to, Clark, do you want to continue?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but I didn't, I had copious notes, and of course I didn't bring them. So this is going to be a truncated version. Of course, I attended the economic development seminar. Another one was on community schools, which is kind of an interesting term. I didn't quite really know what that meant, until I attended the seminar. And it really has to do with a new way of looking at schools as being kind of a place of where both, partnership between the school and the community, but all facets, from government to businesses, and everybody being inclusive in it. And we kind of have a form of that in Brisbane right now, but this is a more defined form. I mean, we have it where we have our recreation programs that, are on school sites and stuff like that, but this is a more expanded version of it. And it's pretty interesting because one of the presenters at his office is actually in downtown San Francisco. So, of course, I got their contact information and want to learn more about this. And, hopefully that's something we can kind of bat around in a 2x2 committee with our school colleagues. Like first, get the concept of what it is, maybe with their school superintendent and city manager before we, branch out if this is something that the school is interested in, because they're a real integral part in how all this would work, and it's really kind of a new form of education. And of course, California now is changing their standards in the next couple of years, so I don't know how all that ties together, but it's certainly interesting, so to see a lot. Another one is the future of water. Future of gold.
Yeah.
Liquid gold. And there was a lot of discussion about, this new bill that was going to come out with the legislature on a new bond, a water bond. And what a lot of people are saying is that why not make it widely inclusive of everything? Make it a huge water bond that's going to include, the small communities, large communities, coastal communities, the farmlands, everybody, instead of a small one. And, there's good points and bad points with anything, but, to hear from the smaller communities out on the coast, a lot of them were pretty vocal that, we're not included in it. We weren't included in the last one, and it's like, we're going to be down to 15 gallons a day per resident if we're not included in it, and it's absolutely imperative to our survival of a community, so there's good points that everybody has. And The delta is really a big key on whether to pipe it, to dike it, and apparently some smelt fish is really throwing a cog into the whole work because they call it endangered or something, and so it's really really interesting on how this is coming together from a Southern California perspective to a Northern California perspective to a coastal California perspective, and it's all meshing together. And you're actually having some of the Republicans are driving for a bigger bond, which is unusual. Taking a leadership role in it, so highly unusual.
Yeah, well, a lot of those Republicans are in the valley.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
All that water.
Farmland's a big thing. Another one Stuart would be interested in is the Affordable Care Act. And God, what a mess that was. I think I forwarded you information on that, and I don't know if it was helpful or if you already knew it or confusing as all get out. But of course, this is why our federal government is currently shut down.
Excuse me, Sherry.
Yeah.
Can you turn the blower off?
Are you having trouble hearing me?
No,
Oh.
it's windy.
I was wondering why your hair is going back. No. Let's see. The Affordable Care Act is an interesting one. There's a lot of detail on that. Some of the stuff I just didn't. It was beyond me, because it has to do with if you don't do this by such time, then it really comes down to it's anybody over 50 employees. We're kind of right on that cusp, but get them extended out to 60, then you wouldn't be subject to it. So it's going to be interesting how all this comes together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, we've talked about this for quite a while. And right now, that's all I can remember of what I attended.
Okay.
Stay tuned for next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I because I had that TRACON meeting, it was like right in the middle of the conference. I only attended one day. I just did the one-day deal. Having gone to quite a few of the conferences, it kind of felt like, I wanted to just go there and check out the expo, and see what these different companies are doing with water, with energy, with waste management. There's some pretty interesting companies out there that are doing some amazing things, and so gathered a lot of information. Haven't reached out to any of these companies yet. I was hoping to do so maybe in the next week or two, and kind of bring some of that information to the sustainability committee, because when I'm trying to get information from these different companies, it's more related to the Baylands. I think what we have right now is pretty dialed in. We'll happen out at the Baylands, if we want to do something big with energy, and big systems, big water systems, then that seems the appropriate place. So that's it for me.
Okay, I'll be short. One of the things that Clark and I were both there for the whole conference, and so there was quite a few workshops going on, and so we arranged to make sure that we would not be at the same workshop, so we would get different kinds of information. And I think that worked very well. And I just have a couple of highlights that I think are important for all of us to know about. Of course, one of the issues is what's going to replace, if anything, the redevelopment financing. That issue came up in quite a few sessions. And the legislature seems to be interested in trying to do something to help with infrastructure financing. But the governor is quite adamantly opposed to doing anything in the near term. So the general view was that it's not likely to have anything happen in the near term. And one of the complicating issues is it turns out that the bill, the resolution bill, I think it was 1484, to deal with the whole question of the demise of redevelopment agencies and the creation of the successor agencies and the housing authorities and who gets all the money and so forth that used to go to the redevelopment areas. There are 150 lawsuits filed against the state, I guess primarily against the Department of Finance from different cities, obviously. So there's a lot of unhappiness and a lot of conflict, a lot of legal conflict, and that's probably another reason why the governor's not too keen on moving ahead until we get a little bit further along on all these matters. Fortunately, we're not among them. Another thing that was kind of interesting, that it turns out, at least as I understood it, that we all know that we have to do this ethics training. It turns out, according to what one of the speakers said, we now also have to do training in financial management. That's what I heard. So we have a new training that we are legally required to take. And I guess we'll find out about how to get that done and so forth in the future.
You'll manage.
Right. We all know about the awards that have been given for years to outstanding city performance and so forth, but there's now a whole new set of awards for sustainability. 10 different categories, and the big thing that they're looking for is measurable reductions in greenhouse gases. And so I went to a whole session about that, and I have a lot of information, but it was quite interesting, the tales of the various cities, and a lot of cities are doing some amazing things. So it's a lot to learn from them. On the other side of that issue, there's also an effort to weaken CEQA, that is the Environmental Quality Act. And there are a number of laws that were actually passed this time that at the time of the conference were still in the governor's office. And then there are a number of other laws that were introduced that are two-year bills, so that haven't been acted on as yet. One of which may or may not affect is the Stenberg bill, who's the head of the Senate, who wants to make it easier for infill projects to be processed without the necessity for different layers of environmental impact reports. And I'm hoping our city attorney will keep us closely informed on that, because that could conceivably affect the Baylands. Hasn't passed yet, but it's alive and well in the legislature. And Brown has indicated that he might very well sign it, so we have to watch that one.
That one has to do with the new arena.
Yeah, well, it all came about because it was a really special interest legislation to protect the, or support or facilitate the new arena in Sacramento. Yeah. All those things you find out when you go up to Sacramento, you know, how things really work. Another very interesting session, and this is the last one, was a couple of long-term lobbyists were complaining about how term limits, the short past term limits, really totally undermined the effectiveness of the legislature, because before people could even figure out where the bathrooms were, they were either out of there or running for higher office. So that from their point of view, particularly the 6-year limit was a total disaster in terms of the professionalism of the legislature. And now this new initiative that passed that changes it from 6 to 12 years, they're actually hopeful that maybe there might be some members of particularly the Assembly will be committed to being a legislator. In the past number of years, it's basically been the lobbyists and the special interests that have been running the legislature, not the legislators. This guy was giving many stories of how in the old days the legislators actually knew more than the lobbyists and the staff, because they'd been there for 15, 20 years. But now, with people just going through the revolving door, there isn't any legislator who has that kind of expertise. And so there's this hope that this 12-year change, the change to 12 years as the minimum, will make it a more professional legislature. Beg pardon?
Lack of institutional memory.
Oh, yeah, none whatsoever, yeah, right. So that was kind of an interesting point. Now, whether that optimism turns out to be true or not, time will tell. Okay, those are the highlights that I wanted to report. And Clay, International City Managers Association.
Okay, so I attended the ICMA conference in Boston 2 weeks ago, I guess now. There were three things of interest that I could report back to you. I did a workshop that basically was focused on internal organizational issues and basically aligning your resources with your strategic goals as a city, and came away with some ideas in that area. And I know that we've been talking about both in the context of our work plan as well as our staffing resources, and I think that's kind of a focus that most cities around the country have, because everybody's lost people and has had to really kind of refocus on how they make those kinds of adjustments. So I've got some ideas that I'm planning on torturing the staff with in the near future in that area. Give them a heads up tonight that this will be coming. The second thing was I did a sustainability tour to Cambridge, which was really very interesting. Of course, that's a built environment as opposed to the Baylands, which I was doing this in the context of. But I came away with some interesting takeaways and kind of the way they approached it from a zoning perspective and also from a public works infrastructure perspective, and that was really kind of their focus. And they really have evolved over many years and decades and stuff. With the way they have planned for the future and the evolution of that area, and it is an area that I think would remind you a lot of Berkeley, interestingly enough, with Harvard there, but just the built environment, and also a lot of neighborhoods in San Francisco. So a lot of the same sorts of stuff in terms of making it much more bicycle friendly, automobile hostile, if you will. A real focus on infill development, housing, retail. Those types of things. And they claim that they ride their bicycles 12 months a year, which I questioned, but they insisted that they did, so I have to believe them. And then the third thing is I spent some time with the Center for Priority Budgeting, which is an organization that is affiliated with ICMA, and got some information from them, and I want to follow up with them a little bit further. Stuart and I briefly have talked about this, and I want to bring it back to the Council Finance Subcommittee. Some things that other cities are doing in terms of priority budgeting. It's just, I know that's a focus we have, but we haven't really quite yet defined how we're going to do it, and so maybe this can help us a little bit. So those are my three big main takeaways from the conference. And it was a good conference, very well attended, and a lot of people from a pretty huge contingency from California was there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thought it was productive.
Yeah, I don't usually go every year, but I usually try to go every few years, and I find it, in that, I think if you go every year, you kind of hear the same stuff all the time. If you go every few years, you can, hear some different things and get some different focuses, and especially depending, for the city like Boston, I mean, a lot of it was, unique to that area, which, was helpful. We were actually staying, and the convention was right near where the bombing happened last spring, and we were actually staying on that street, which we didn't know until we got there. But that was, that going through that whole episode with the locals was pretty instructive. Very, as you can imagine, an event that has really kind of shaped the city in a different way, and it really lives in the memory of the people who live there, very pronounced way.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, good. Okay, moving on to the situation for the dust
Speaking of
and
shell-shocked.
stockpiles and so forth on the Baylands.
Yeah, so we've had, on a staff level, had a very busy 2 or 3 weeks. Public Works Director has been busy working with both the property owner and the operators out there and the Bay Area Air Quality District in terms of the dust control issue and the best management practices and the enforcement of that, which includes water trucks, street sweeping, and other items. So we'll have a more full report to bring to the subcommittee on that, and he's working on getting that plan put together. The other issues really were kind of the long-term plan, which we had requested of the property owner to get their information into us for the process of permit through the Planning Commission. They have done that. That is now being reviewed by our environmental consultants, ESA, and it will be coming forward to the Planning Commission sometime, I'm not sure. I was going to say later this year, but we're getting close to the end of the year, so it may be even into next year. But we were going to try to bring that through the council subcommittee first and and then ultimately to the council to get some kind of direction to the Planning Commission with regards to that. In the meantime, there's the more immediate issue of what are we going to do over the next, year or so, and what's the strategy going to be. The operator has presented to staff or sent in to staff kind of an outline with some suggestions, but frankly haven't been able to review that in any detail at this point. But we plan on bringing that back to the facilities subcommittee. I believe we're meeting October 15th. So we'll be going over both the short term as well as the long term, as well as the dust control strategies, and then that would be timely to bring that back in more fuller detail to the October 21st meeting.
Okay. Have there been any dust problems?
I don't believe we've had any reports, so I'm going to say no, but I'd have to check with staff to see if we've had any complaints that have come in, or with the Bay Area Air Quality Agency, because they potentially someone could file a complaint with them and not notify us.
Any question? Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to mayor council matters. Any countywide or subcommittee reports?
Terry and I met regards to, let's see, which one was it? You remember?
Oh,
Fresh in my memory.
yes.
Well, it's one of those ordinances that will be coming in the next agenda.
Yes, one of those
With a
ordinances
recommendation.
are coming in the planning issues.
Yeah,
Planning issues, yes.
Grading ordinance.
Yes, the grading ordinance.
grading ordinance, yeah. So we ferreted through that, made a few corrections, and took the data that we put, and then we added in
The sub-areas changes that we didn't make sub-areas, we made it one covering the entire town,
right.
city.
And then those will be coming forth at our next meeting with a recommendation to adopt it.
Okay.
Good memory, thank you.
Any others? Okay. I don't think we have any written communications.
Should we,
Oh, we had one. We had one.
the email from Dan?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the one. Yeah, right, exactly. And that had to do with concern about what we're going to do in the closed session on Sierra Point. And of course, we didn't really do anything yet, so the concern of the public involvement in whatever we do there is noted. Okay. Oral communications number 2. Anyone like to speak to the council?
There was something that I did want to mention.
Oh, you want to mention something before we do that? Okay,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
go for it. I remember go ahead. Sorry, I forgot. You're right.
It was, Kevin, talked about, Pat Waldo's contribution to Live at Mission Blue and in memory of Steve. And I know that we as a council had talked about doing something to recognize Steve for all of the years of service
Right.
that he has done. So I'm just kind of curious where we are with.
Yeah, we reached out to the Waldo family, and there are some ideas that they have suggested. I was going to bring it back to the Facilities Committee because it had to do with, well, I don't know how to describe it, but it basically had to do with something you would put in a park and some rock formations. But I was going to bring it back to the Facilities Subcommittee, and then, we would talk about it and then potentially bring it back to the council after that.
Okay. No, that sounds good.
The one thing we have agreed to do is to dedicate the history book to him.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. The, on the 30th, that dinner honoring people who contribute to diversity,
Oh, yeah, I've already.
right? We were going to bring that up, yeah. You got a email from the head?
From Jorge,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
So, as the mayor last year, I nominated, I'm blanking on her name from the, it's an organization that helps women who might be in abusive relationships, and it's a house. Oh, boy, she's a really good friend of Lisa's. Now I'm blanking out.
It was Deborah Jaramillo. No, Deborah. I think was it Jaramillo from the Latino Commission.
Latino Commission, yes. And so, so I mean, she's, super lady. And, it was really nice to honor her. But, I mean, it doesn't have to be someone of Hispanic background. I mean, it could, it's diversity. It's honoring diversity in the community. And so we have, in the past, have nominated someone and honored that person. Clark, the person that is the co-owner of.
Yeah, at the time, it was Roel and Mesa Villa Carlos.
7 Mile House. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but that's the same night as the State of the City address. So. But we're the only city who has not put forth someone to recognize, and so we need to.
That's why we got an email.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't have a formal nomination from, because we talked about it once before, and we threw around a couple of ideas, but nothing formally has come, and I guess they're giving us a little leeway on the deadline if there are people who want to make, particularly members of the council who want to make recommendations as to someone we could nominate, then
Yeah.
I think we can still do so if we get our act together.
Yes, yeah, but of course we also need someone who is going to make the presentation. So I don't think you can be at two places.
It can't be me, yeah.
At one time.
But I'm sure we could arrange someone to do the presentation. That the question is nominating somebody that's worthy of this recognition. That's the issue.
Well, what it is for somebody that promotes cultural diversity. Mm-hmm. And we really had somebody come before us tonight who really does that through music. Doesn't necessarily, mean anything, and that's an idea.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
I would recommend Kevin Fryer.
that makes sense, yeah. So we do that?
Yeah,
Makes sense to me.
Because, music is really a culturally diverse thing. That's something that really brings, I think, the world together more than anything. Sure, not war. That, you find that, the one common thread in any culture is their music. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. So maybe we
Staff's
put that
smiling.
together and, yeah, okay.
Yes, I got that. And at the last meeting, Clark, you said you might be able to do that if we had somebody, are you, because Jorge
Yeah.
Caramillo is
Actually,
emailing
I talked
me.
to Jorge up
Okay.
in Sacramento,
Okay,
and so, I told him that I would be there.
okay.
And
So I'll RSVP for you, and then I will, we'll work on getting the nomination to him as soon as
Well, we have to
possible.
get Kevin's agreement, of course.
True, I guess.
We don't want to be,
Does, he
He
has
doesn't
to
have to
be,
show up.
yeah,
he has to be agreeable to be nominated?
I would think so.
Well,
That would be
you'd really
polite to do.
It seemed like it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure. I figure if you're not in a meeting, you can be nominated.
Yeah, well, for each other, we do that all the time, but,
Our chief of police was nominated one year.
right? Yeah. Okay, so I think it's a good idea, but I think it would be courteous to let him know that's what we plan to do, if it's okay with him.
Okay.
All right. Now we go to oral communications number 2. Seeing no request, we're ready. Actually, it's 1 minute from 10:30.
Well, let's wait.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, all
I'll
in
second.
favor, aye.
Don't want to get too excited here.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want a thought to come into anybody's head. Oh, by the way,
Now I'm full of water. How you doing, Dr. Savrol? Good.